The forest was silent, but Ethan could feel something strange in the air. Like the trees themselves were holding their breath, he had traveled far from the human colony, searching for old ruins that belonged to the alien races who once ruled. This part of the galaxy, his scanner showed nothing but broken signals, yet his instincts pushed him forward. At last, hidden under thick roots and stone, he found it. An entrance covered with moss and old alien markings. The metal door was rusted, but it opened with a loud groan when Ethan pushed. A cold air rushed out, carrying the smell of dust and iron. He stepped inside, his flashlight cutting through the dark. The corridor was narrow and lined with strange glowing symbols. The walls felt alive, humming faintly, like something deep inside still carried power. Ethan walked carefully, every step echoing. Soon he reached a large chamber, and what he saw froze him in place. In the middle of the room stood a cage. Its bars were made of dark alloy, wrapped with glowing chains that pulsed like veins of fire. Inside the cage, a figure sat curled against the corner. At first, Ethan thought it was some kind of beast, but then his light revealed more. It was a girl, young, though her body carried alien features. Her eyes glowed faintly gold in the shadows. Her hair was wild, her nails sharp like claws, and strange markings covered her skin. Her wrists and ankles were bound by the same glowing chains. She looked weak, her breathing shallow, yet when the beam of his light touched her face, she stirred. Her head lifted slowly, and those golden eyes met his. Ethan felt his chest tighten. He had seen many aliens in his life, some friendly, some cruel, but never one like this. She looked like a mixture of human and beast. A creature made for fear, and yet he saw something else. Something hidden behind her eyes, pain, loneliness, and despair. She tried to speak, but her voice came out as a low growl. Her throat was too dry, too broken. She tried again. A weak sound, almost a whisper, but Ethan could not understand her. Words, even without language, he knew what she was asking. Help! Ethan stepped closer. His boots scraped against the floor, and she flinched, as if expecting pain. He stopped, raising his hands slowly. I won't hurt you, he whispered though. He knew she did not understand his tongue. Still, she blinked at him, watching, studying. Her chest rose and fell quickly. Like a cornered animal, he studied the cage. The locks were not ordinary. They glowed with alien power. Designed to hold something strong, far stronger than a human. Why would they chain a girl like this? What was she? Ethan's hand hovered near the bars. The air crackled when he got closer, like static electricity stinging his skin. He should have turned back. Every part of his training told him this was dangerous, but the girl's eyes, those eyes full of silent cries, kept him there. She reached forward slowly, her thin arm trembling. Her chained wrist clinked as she pushed her hand toward the bars. Her fingers stopped just short of touching the cold metal. Her expression was not rage, not hate, but fear and a faint spark of hope. Ethan hesitated, then took a breath and reached out. His hand moved past the barrier, and the moment his skin touched hers, the world seemed to shatter. The chains lit up with blinding light. A sharp crack echoed through the chamber. Sparks burst from the locks. The girl gasped, her eyes wide. For years, no one had dared touch her, and now, with a single human hand, the impossible had happened. The lock on her wrist snapped open. The glowing chain fell to the floor, fading as if its power was broken. One by one, the bindings on her ankles and other wrists shattered. The cage shook, its bars bending slightly as the energy that held them collapsed. The girl stumbled forward, falling against the bars. Her breathing was heavy, her golden eyes wide with shock. Then she looked at Ethan, not as a beast looks at prey, but as a prisoner looks at freedom. She collapsed to her knees, trembling for a moment. Ethan thought she would attack, but instead, she pressed her forehead to the floor. A sound escaped. Her throat, soft and broken, it was not a growl this time, but almost a sob. Ethan knelt beside the bars. "You're free," he said softly. His words were simple, but his tone carried the meaning. The girl lifted her head, her hair falling. Over her glowing eyes, she could not understand his language, but she understood the truth. For the first time in years, the chains were gone. And the first hand to break them was not alien, not cruel, but human. Ethan's touch had set her free. The girl's chains fell one by one until the silence of the chamber was broken only by her uneven breaths. For so long, the glow of those shackles had been her world. Now, for the first time, her skin felt light, her arms her own. She stared at the human in disbelief. Her body trembled. Unsure if she should move or stay still, Ethan watched carefully. He could see how fragile she looked. Her legs were thin from years without walking. Her shoulders bent forward as if the weight of chains still pressed her down. He wanted to help her stand, but he moved slowly, giving her the choice. The girl placed one clawed hand on the ground and tried to push herself up. Her knees shook, her hair fell across her glowing eyes. A low whimper escaped her throat when her legs gave way, and she collapsed again. Ethan stepped closer, his hands outstretched. "Easy," he whispered, knowing she could not understand his words. Still, she looked at him, eyes filled with questions. He offered his hand, open and steady, for a long moment. She stared at it. Her claws hovered near his palm. Afraid of hurting him, afraid that if she touched again, more chains would appear. Finally, with a trembling breath, she reached out. Her fingers brushed his skin. This time, there was no spark, no explosion, only warmth. She let him pull her gently. To her feet, her body swayed, and instinctively she clung to him. Her head rested briefly against his shoulder. He could feel her heart racing like a frightened animal's. Step by step, he guided her out of the cage. The bars groaned as if mourning their prisoner's escape. When her bare feet touched the cold floor outside for the first time, she froze. Her chest rose sharply, as if she could not believe she was free. She tilted her head back, and Ethan followed her gaze. The ceiling above had cracks where shafts of light cut through. Dust drifted in the air. Glowing like tiny stars, the girl stretched her hand into the light. Her claws curled, her palm open. For the first time in her life, she felt warmth on her skin that did not burn. Her lips parted slightly. She whispered something in her tongue, a sound soft and filled with wonder. Ethan could not understand the word, but he understood the meaning. It was the sound of freedom. But freedom was dangerous. Ethan knew whoever built this cage would not let her go so easily. He looked back at the broken chains scattered on the ground. They had been designed with alien technology far beyond what humans used. Whoever had captured her had feared her power deeply. That fear would drive them to hunt her again. The girl staggered as she tried to take another step. Ethan caught her arm before she fell. She looked up at him, her golden eyes glowing in the dim light. There was gratitude there, but also a question: why? Why would a stranger free her when her own kind had locked her away? Ethan gave a small smile. "Because no one deserves chains," he said quietly, again. She could not understand, but something in his tone eased her heart. Her breathing calmed. She glanced around the room nervously. The alien symbols on the walls flickered faintly, reacting to her presence. Ethan realized they were alarms. He had little time. Soon others would come. He needed to get her out before they were trapped. "Come," he said, pointing to the corridor. He stepped toward it, but the girl did not follow. She stood still, her bare feet planted, her claws flexed, her body tense. For a moment, Ethan feared she would return to the cage. But then she looked at him again, studying his face, slowly. She stepped forward. Her movement was awkward. Every step unsteady. Yet with each step, her posture grew straighter, her back lifted. Her shoulders shook off the invisible weight. When they reached the corridor, she inhaled sharply. A new scent filled her lung-stamped soil roots, the faint smell of the outside world. Her eyes widened, and she quickened her pace. At last, they reached the broken door that led back into the forest. When she stepped out, the sunlight fell across her skin. For a second, she froze, as if expecting pain. Then, when nothing happened, she gasped. Her golden eyes reflected the light like fire. She took a deep breath, a sound almost like a sob. Her lips moved again, forming a word in her language. Ethan could not understand it. But the way she whispered it again and again told him enough. She was saying the same thing each time, a word that meant more than anything else: freedom. Ethan let her walk a few steps ahead, watching her bare feet touch grass for the first time. She bent down suddenly, her fingers brushing over the blades. She lifted them to her face, breathing in their scent. Her expression shifted. Fear was still there, but now mixed with wonder. He realized then that this girl, this so-called beast, was more like a child tasting life for the first time. She was not the monster others had painted her to be. She was something far more dangerous to them. Hope. The forest around them rustled. Birds scattered into the air. Ethan tensed. He knew it was only a matter of time before hunters tracked her scent. He looked at the girl, who still knelt on the grass, clutching it like treasure. "We have to move," he whispered. She lifted her head, her glowing eyes meeting his again. She did not know his words, but she understood the urgency in his voice. She stood, shaky but determined. Her hand reached for his sleeve, gently holding it as if to say she would not walk alone. Together, they stepped deeper into the forest. Behind them, the ruins grew silent once more. But in that silence, something new had begun. For the first time, the beast girl had breathed free air. And for the first time, she had someone to walk beside her. The forest seemed calm. But Ethan knew it was not safe. He could feel it in the air, the tension. The silence broken only by the crunch of leaves beneath their feet. The girl walked beside him, her claws brushing against the bark of trees as though testing if they were real. Every step she took was shaky but stronger than the last. She was free now, but freedom came with danger. Whoever had locked her in chains would not sit quietly. They would come, and when they did, they would not show mercy. Ethan kept his ears sharp, his hand always near the small blaster at his side. The girl stayed close, her glowing eyes watching everything with sharp focus. Sometimes she would sniff the air like a wild creature. Sometimes she would grab Ethan's sleeve when she heard something. He realized she had instincts humans could not match. She could sense things long before he could. They reached a small stream where the water sparkled in the sunlight. The girl bent down, her reflection staring back at her. For a long moment, she studied herself, her claws touching the ripples. She looked at Ethan, then back at the water. Her lips moved as if forming a word, but no sound came. It was as if she was asking him silently, "Is this really me?" Before Ethan could speak, a sharp sound cut through the forest. A high-pitched hum, almost mechanical. The girl's head snapped up, her ears twitching slightly. Ethan's stomach sank. He knew that sound. It was a drone, a hunter's eye in the sky. "Down," he whispered, pulling her toward the ground. They crouched behind thick roots as the drone passed above. Its red lights scanned the forest floor, sweeping left and right. The girl growled softly, her claws digging into the soil. Ethan placed his hand gently on hers, and she stopped. Her breathing slowed, her glowing eyes fixed on him. The drone moved on. But Ethan knew it would return. If one was here, more would follow. The hunters had already begun their search. They started moving again, faster this time. Ethan led the way through narrow paths covered with vines. The girl followed closely, But suddenly she froze. Her body stiffened. Her eyes narrowed. She pointed ahead with a trembling claw. Ethan squinted and saw shadows moving between the trees, hunters, tall figures in dark armor. Their weapons glowed faintly. Designed to capture, not kill, they spread out silently, scanning the ground, searching for tracks. Ethan cursed under his breath. They were closing in. He turned to the girl, placing his finger against his lips to signal silence. She nodded, her golden eyes wide. Together they slipped deeper into the forest. But the hunters were skilled. Every step they took seemed to bring them closer. The sound of branches snapping, the shimmer of armor through the trees, felt like a trap tightening around them. The girl suddenly tugged on Ethan's arm, pulling him toward a fallen log. Without a word, she crouched and crawled inside the hollow space. Ethan followed, squeezing into the dark. They pressed close, hidden by shadows and moss. His heart pounded as heavy boots crunched nearby. The hunters stopped just a few steps away. Their voices were cold. Speaking in a tongue the girl understood, but Ethan could not. Still, he caught the tone commanding, cruel. They were hunting her like an animal. One of them raised a scanner, its light sweeping dangerously close to their hiding spot. Ethan held his breath. He could feel the girl trembling beside him. Then, as the light passed, she made a low sound. A growl from deep in her chest, her body tensed, her claws ready to strike. Ethan quickly grabbed her hand. His touch was firm but gentle. She looked at him, eyes burning with anger, ready to fight. But his calm face steadied her. Slowly, her breathing slowed again. The hunters moved on, their shadows fading into the distance. Ethan let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. He turned to the girl, who was still gripping his arm tightly. She stared at him for a long time, then slowly let go. Her claws left marks in the wood, but her eyes softened. They crawled out from the log once it was safe. The forest felt different, now longer a place of freedom, but a battlefield. Every sound was a warning, every shadow a threat. As they continued, Ethan realized the girl's steps were changing. No longer shaky, they were becoming more confident, more natural. She was adapting, growing stronger with every passing moment, and yet her trust in him was also growing. Every time danger came, she looked at him first, as if waiting for his signal. By nightfall, they reached a clearing. The stars above glowed brightly. Scattered like diamonds, the girl tilted her head back, staring at the sky in awe. She whispered something again, a word Ethan could not understand, but her voice carried both wonder and sorrow. Perhaps she was remembering a time before the chains, or dreaming of a place she had lost. Ethan sat beside her, watching the tree line. He knew the hunters would not stop. They had only survived the first chase. More would come, stronger, faster. He looked at the girl and said softly, "Will, keep moving. They won't take you back." She turned her golden eyes to him. Her lips trembled. Then she reached out, her clawed hand resting lightly on his arm. It was a small gesture, but it spoke louder than words. She trusted him. The forest behind them grew quiet again, but Ethan knew the silence meant only one thing. The shadows were still out there, hunting, waiting. The game had only just begun. The night stretched long, and the forest whispered with the sounds of hidden creatures. Ethan sat near a fallen log, his blaster resting in his lap. He kept his eyes on the shadows, listening for movement. But what drew his attention most was the girl. She sat close, her knees pulled to her chest, her golden eyes glowed faintly in the dark, watching the fire Ethan had built. She looked at the flames with both fear and wonder. Every time a spark rose, she flinched. Yet she did not move away. Instead, she leaned slightly closer to Ethan, as though his presence gave her courage. Ethan studied her carefully. She was not just surviving, she was learning every sound, every gesture. She was paying attention. He had noticed earlier how she mimicked his movements, how she tilted her head when he spoke, as though trying to match his words with meaning. When he handed her a piece of dried rations, she sniffed it suspiciously. Her claws tapped against the rough surface. Then she took a cautious bite, chewing slowly for a moment. Her expression shifted, her glowing eyes widened, her lips curled upward. She made a soft sound, almost like laughter. Ethan felt something stir in his chest at the sight, but peace did not last long. A sharp noise came from the trees, distant but real. The girl stiffened instantly, her claws digging into the ground. Ethan raised his blaster, scanning the shadows. Nothing appeared, but both of them knew they were still being hunted. The girl's breathing quickened, her body shook, not with weakness, but with rage. Her claws gleamed in the firelight. Ethan recognized the danger if she lost control now. If she gave in to the beast inside her, she would make enough noise to bring every hunter in the forest. He turned to her quickly, his hand reaching for hers. She snapped her head toward him, her eyes blazing like fire. For a moment, Ethan thought she would strike him, but the second his palm touched her trembling claws, something changed. The golden glow in her eyes flickered. Her breathing slowed. The growl in her throat faded. She blinked at him, confused, as if not understanding why his touch calmed her. Ethan kept his voice soft. "It's all right," he whispered. His words were meaningless to her, but his tone carried the message. His hand stayed against hers, steady and warm. Slowly, she lowered her claws. The tension in her shoulders faded. For several minutes, they sat like that, her hand trembling in his. The fire crackled, filling the silence. Ethan realized then that his touch was more than comfort, it was a key. Somehow, his presence kept her human side stronger than her beast. Without him, she might lose control, but with him, she was different. She was calm. The girl tilted her head slightly, studying their joined hands. Then she pressed her claws gently into his palm. Testing, when he did not pull away, she made a soft sound, a whisper of a word in her own tongue. Ethan could not understand it, but he felt the weight of it. She was trying to speak to him, to share something she had no words for in his language. Later, as the fire burned low, Ethan tried teaching her simple words. He touched his chest. "Ethan," he said slowly, pointing to himself. She blinked, then repeated softly, "Ah." Then her voice was rough, but the sound was clear. Ethan smiled. She had spoken his name. Then he pointed to her. Waiting, she hesitated, then pressed her hand against her chest. Her lips moved. "Ka. Rhea." The name was broken, heavy with years of silence, but it was hers. Ethan repeated it softly. "Korea." She looked at him with wide eyes, as though shocked he had spoken it with respect. From that moment, their bond deepened. She was no longer just the beast girl in chains. She was Korea. She had a name, and he had spoken it. As the night grew colder, Korea shivered. Her body was thin, her clothes nothing more than torn rags from her time in the cage. Ethan removed his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. She stiffened at first, unused to kindness. But then she pulled the fabric close, burying her face in its warmth. For the first time since he found her, she looked safe. When dawn broke, they moved again. The forest was brighter. But danger still followed. At one point, they heard voices, hunters. Searching nearby, Korea's claws flexed, her golden eyes burning. But Ethan touched her shoulder gently. Guiding her to silence, she listened, her rage fading under his hand. Each time he reached for her, she grew calmer. Each time she looked at him, she seemed to find strength. Ethan realized their bond was not just survival, was trust, fragile but real. That night, as they rested again, Korea surprised him. She pointed to the stars above and whispered one word in his tongue. Broken but clear. Home, Ethan looked at her, his chest tightening. She had chosen that word out of all he had taught. She did not mean a place of stone walls or cities. She meant him. He reached out, taking her hand once more. Home, he whispered back. And for the first time, Korea smiled. The forest stretched endlessly. But Ethan knew they could not hide forever. Korea walked beside him, her steps stronger now. Her golden eyes no longer only showed fear. They carried something else, trust. Every time danger came near, she looked to him. Every time she grew restless. His touch steadied her, but trust was fragile, and the galaxy was merciless. By the third day, Ethan noticed signs of other humans, not from his colony, but from patrols who worked for the alien hunters. They were mercenaries, men who sold their loyalty for credits, and Ethan knew if they saw Korea, they would not see her as a girl. They would see her as a prize. That evening, Ethan and Korea reached a small clearing near a river. The water was clean, and Ethan hoped they could rest. Korea crouched near the riverbank, her claws trailing through the surface. She stared at her reflection again, whispering her name softly. Korea, testing it as if it were still strange, to her lips. But the moment of peace was shattered. Voices came from the trees. Human voices. Ethan's chest tightened. He recognized them, soldiers from the outpost, armored and armed. They stepped into the clearing with their weapons ready. Their leader, a tall man with a scar across his face, pointed at Korea. There she is. The man said coldly, the beast girl, the bounty on her will make us rich. Korea froze, her golden eyes wide. She stepped back toward Ethan, her claws raised. Ethan raised his blaster, but the men outnumbered him. Their rifles glowed, targeting both him and her. The leader sneered. Step aside, Ethan. You don't know what she is. She's dangerous. She's not human. She's a monster. Korea's body shook. Her eyes burned. She wanted to fight, but Ethan placed his hand on her shoulder. Steadying her, he looked at the soldiers, his voice firm. She's not a monster. She's not what you think. She's alive. She deserves freedom. The soldiers laughed bitterly. Freedom. For that thing? She'll tear you apart the moment you turn your back. Don't be a fool. The scarred man raised his weapon. Move, Ethan, or we chain you both. For a moment, Ethan felt torn. These were his people. They spoke his language. They offered him safety if he just stepped aside. If he let them take Korea, he could return home without fear. But then he looked at her, at the way she trembled. Not from rage, but from fear of losing the only person who had stood by her. Korea's lips moved, whispering one word, broken but clear, home. Ethan's heart tightened. That one word destroyed all doubt. He raised his blaster higher, stepping. In front of her, his voice was steady. If you want her, you'll have to go through me. The soldiers hesitated, shocked. The scarred leader snarled. You've lost your mind, Ethan. She's using you. She's nothing but a weapon. We can sell her to the aliens, or destroy her before she destroys us. Don't be blinded. But Ethan shook his head. No, you're the blind ones. You can't see her for what she is. She's not chains. She's not rage. She's someone, and I won't let you take her back. The leader's face darkened. He gave a sharp signal. The soldiers spread out, weapons raised, the clearing filled with tension. The firelight flickered against their armor. Korea pressed against Ethan's back, her claws flexing. For the first time, she whispered his name, E. Then, the sound of her voice, broken but clear, made him grip his blaster tighter. He had given her his trust, and now she was giving it back. The first shot came. A bolt of light seared past Ethan's shoulder. He fired back, forcing the soldiers to scatter. Korea growled, her golden eyes blazing. But Ethan touched her arm, keeping her steady. Not yet, he whispered. The fight was quick and brutal. Ethan was skilled, but the soldiers were many. One managed to strike his side, pain flashing through him. He stumbled but refused to fall. Every time he wavered, Korea steadied him with her grip. At last, with several soldiers down, the rest pulled back. The scarred leader spat on the ground. "You've chosen her over your own kind. You're a traitor, Ethan. And when they find you, no one will protect you. Not even her." With those words, the soldiers retreated into the shadows. Leaving the clearing littered with scorch marks and broken branches, Ethan lowered his blaster, his breathing heavy. Korea rushed to his side. Her claws trembling as she touched his wound, she made a soft sound, a whimper filled with worry. Ethan forced a small smile. "I'm fine," he whispered, though pain burned in his ribs. She shook her head, pressing closer. Her golden eyes glistened for the first time. Ethan saw tears gather there that night as they rested by the river. Korea stayed close, her hand never leaving his arm. She understood now. He had chosen her over his own people. He had risked everything to protect her, and deep inside, Ethan knew the truth as well. The bond they shared was no longer just survival. It was loyalty. It was trust strong enough to defy even his own kind. But betrayal had a price. The humans who once stood with him would now hunt him too. And in the silence of the night, both Ethan and Korea knew the galaxy would not forgive their choice. The night after the betrayal was restless. Ethan's wound ached, but he refused to let Korea see how much it hurt. She stayed close, her golden eyes never leaving him. She had seen him stand against his own kind. And though she did not speak many words, her touch on his arm told him she understood, but danger was still hunting them. By dawn, the forest grew louder with the hum of machines. The alien hunters had arrived, and this time, they were not sending scouts. They were sending war machines. Ethan and Korea ran through the trees, the ground shaking as metal beasts crashed after them. The hunters had unleashed giant drones with claws and nets designed to capture. Their glowing eyes scanned every corner of the forest. Their heavy steps tore through the earth. Korea's breathing grew heavy. She tried to match Ethan's pace, but her instincts burned inside her. Her claws twitched, her body shook. She wanted to fight. But she remembered his words. She remembered how his touch had calmed her before. They broke into a wide clearing. The drones surrounded them, red lights locking onto their bodies. Ethan raised his blaster, but he knew it wasn't enough. The machines were too strong. He glanced at Korea, seeing her trembling with rage. "Stay with me," he whispered. Though his voice cracked with fear, the first drone fired a net of glowing chains. Ethan barely dodged, pulling Korea down with him. Another fired, striking close to his arm. The heat seared his skin. Pain shot through him. Korea let out a cry. Her eyes burned brighter than ever. The hunters' voices echoed through the machines. "Beast girl, surrender. The human cannot save you. Your chains will return." Korea froze, her chest rising and falling fast. The word chains cut deep into her memory. Her body shook violently. Ethan grabbed her hand. "Korea, listen to me. You're not chains anymore. You're free. But this time," his words did not reach her. Something inside her snapped. A roar exploded from her throat, louder than any beast Ethan had ever heard. The sound shook the trees. Birds fled in swarms. The drones hesitated, their red eyes flickering. Korea's body glowed faintly, the markings on her skin burning like fire. Her claws lengthened, her back straightened. For the first time, Ethan saw the full power that had made the galaxy fear her. The beast of Charon was no longer hidden. She was awake, with terrifying speed. She leaped at the nearest drone. Her claws sliced through its armor like paper. Sparks exploded as the machine collapsed. The second drone fired, but she dodged, tearing into it with pure rage. Her roar echoed again. Shaking the forest floor, Ethan staggered to his feet, watching in awe and fear. She was unstoppable. Her movements were wild, brutal. Every strike shattered metal. Every scream carried years of pain. The drones, built to capture armies, were nothing before her fury, but as she fought, Ethan noticed something terrifying. Her golden eyes were losing their light. They were changing, burning with wildfire. She was losing herself. She was becoming the beast the hunters always said she was. Korea. Ethan shouted, stepping forward. She didn't hear him. She struck down the last drone. Ripping its core apart, the ground was littered with broken metal, smoke rising into the sky. The forest was silent again. And then she turned, her chest heaving, her eyes blazing red gold. She looked at Ethan not with trust, but with the gaze of a predator. His heart pounded. He raised his hand slowly. "Korea, it's me," he said softly. For a moment, she growled, her claws raised, her body shook violently, trapped between beast and girl. Ethan stepped closer, ignoring the fear clawing at his chest. "You are not a monster. You're free. You're Korea." He reached out. His hand touched her arm. The same touch that once broke her chains. At first, she snarled, resisting, but then, slowly, her breathing began to slow, her claws lowered. Her glowing eyes flickered. Finally, she collapsed into his arms, trembling. Her body felt heavy with exhaustion. Ethan held her tightly, whispering softly, "It's all right. You're not alone. Not anymore." Korea clung to him weakly, her claws pressing into his back, not with anger, but with desperation. She whispered one broken word, her voice rough and raw. "Ethan." He closed his eyes, relief flooding through him. She had come back. The beast had not taken her completely. His touch had pulled her back from the edge, but Ethan knew now why they feared her. The chains, the hunters, the soldiers, they had seen this power, and they knew it could destroy entire armies. If she lost control, nothing would stop her. Yet as he looked down at her, trembling in his arms, he saw not a weapon, but a girl who had never been given a chance to be more than what they forced her to be. The forest was silent again. But the silence did not mean safety. Smoke from the destroyed drones rose high into the air, a signal for every hunter in the galaxy to find them. Ethan tightened his grip around Korea. His voice, low but steady, "We'll keep moving. We'll find a place where they can't chain you again." Her golden eyes opened slowly, softer now. She pressed her forehead weakly against his chest, whispering the only word she trusted. Home, and Ethan knew, no matter what came, he would fight for that word until the end. Asterisk, the night after the battle felt heavier than the others. The forest was quiet. But it was not the quiet of peace. It was the silence after destruction. Smoke still drifted from the broken machines, and the ground carried the scars of Korea's unleashed power. Ethan sat by a dying fire, his blaster on his lap, his side still hurt from the wound, but his eyes stayed on Korea. She lay nearby, curled under his jacket. Her body trembled with exhaustion. Her claws were stained with ash and metal, her golden eyes half closed. Dim after the fury that had nearly consumed her, he could not stop thinking about what he had seen. Her strength was terrifying. Her rage could level armies. If she lost herself, she would be unstoppable. And yet, when she collapsed into his arms, she had clung to him not as a beast, but as a girl desperate for someone to believe in her. As dawn's first light touched the trees, Korea stirred. She opened her eyes slowly. Golden again, soft, she looked at Ethan. And for the first time, her lips curved faintly into a smile. Small but real. Ethan's heart eased. "Morning," he whispered. Though he knew she did not fully understand, she sat up weakly, her hair falling over her face. She touched her chest and whispered her name, Korea. Then she pointed at him, Ethan. Her voice was rough, broken, but each word was clearer than before. Ethan nodded, smiling faintly. Yes. Ethan, she tilted her head, then touched her chest again. Her lips forming another word. It came out weak, but strong enough to hear. Home. Ethan froze. Staring at her, that word again, it was all she wanted. Not chains, not power, just a place where she could belong. He nodded firmly. Yes, Korea. We'll find home. But before they could move, the forest stirred, branches cracked, voices echoed through the air. More hunters, more soldiers, drawn by the smoke of battle. They were closing in. This time, it would not be a few drones. It would be an army. Ethan stood quickly, helping Korea to her feet. She was still weak, but her eyes burned with determination. She gripped his sleeve tightly, refusing to let go. Together, they ran, pushing through the forest, their breaths heavy, their steps desperate. Soon they reached the edge of the trees. Beyond lay open plains, and in the distance, mountains stretched toward the horizon. If they could reach the mountains, they might hide in the caves. But the open ground was dangerous. The hunters would see them clearly. Behind them, the sound of engines roared, dozens of machines tearing through the forest. Ethan raised his blaster, ready to fight. But Korea placed her hand on his arm. Her eyes met his, golden and steady. She shook her head slowly, whispering, "No, fight." Together, he understood. She was not asking him to stand alone anymore. She was telling him that they would stand as one. The hunters broke through the trees, armored figures with glowing weapons. Their leader shouted, "Surrender the beast. Human, and we will spare your life." Ethan raised his voice, strong and clear. "She's not a beast. She's Korea, and if you want her, you'll have to go through both of us." The hunters moved forward, their weapons crackling. Korea stepped beside Ethan, her claws glowing faintly, her shoulders straight. She was still weak, but her spirit burned, and as she stood there, Ethan realized something: the chains may have once bound her. But now she was bound to him, by choice, not by force. The hunters attacked, but this time, the battle was different. Korea did not lose herself to rage. She fought with Ethan, not as a beast, but as a warrior. She struck with precision, protecting him, while he covered her with his blaster. Together, they moved as one, a bond of trust stronger than chains. The hunters, shocked by their unity, faltered. One by one, they fell back. Their leader snarled, "This is not the end. The galaxy will never accept her, and you will both be hunted until death." Ethan aimed his blaster but did not fire. His voice was calm. "Then let them hunt. We're not afraid." The hunters retreated into the shadows, their threats fading. The forest grew quiet again. This time, silence felt different. Not fear, but victory. Ethan turned to Korea. Her body shook with exhaustion, but her golden eyes glowed with pride. She looked at him and whispered softly, "Home, Atai." "Ethan." Together, he smiled, pulling her close. "Yes, together." They walked toward the mountains. Step by step, the sun rose higher, painting the sky with gold and red, a new dawn. Not of chains, not of cages, but of freedom for Korea. Every breath was proof that she was no longer a prisoner. For Ethan, every step was a promise that he would never let her walk alone. And though the galaxy would never stop hunting them, it did not matter, because in that moment, in the rising light, a human and a beast girl had become something greater: partners, survivors, and maybe even the beginning of a new legend. A legend that started not with chains, but with a touch.